All right, hello everyone. Welcome to our very first event for Virtual National Fossil Day. We're going to give it just a second real quick so I can make sure that we are streaming on all of the platforms we should be streaming on. I think we might be, which is good. Okay, great. I think we're here. So I want to welcome everyone to Virtual National Fossil Day. This is our annual celebration of all things fossils, but this year with an online twist. The event's usually held here at the Alabama Museum of Natural History, but this year we have continued it just on this virtual platform. So a little bit of a background about National Fossil Day. National Fossil Day is an annual celebration that is there to highlight the scientific and educational value of paleontology and the importance of preserving fossils for future generations. The day is organized by the U.S. National Park Service, who encourages local museums and schools and collections and science centers and classrooms and others to celebrate fossils with events and activities. They've got a really great website that you guys can visit if you're interested in it. You can see some of the artwork from this year, as well as some of the events that are happening. I highly recommend you go ahead and check that out. But the Museum of Natural History, where we are right now, has been hosting it for the last 5 years. And this year is no different. So we wanted to make sure we continued to celebrate it. So each year, the National Park Service chooses a theme for the event or that day, and this year's theme was Paleozoic Oceans. We're going to learn a little bit more about what Paleozoic Oceans means at our 2 o'clock event today. Let me pop up that schedule real quick so you guys can see what the schedule looks like for the day. So at the 2 o'clock one with Dr. Alberto Perez Huerta, we're going to talk a little bit about what Paleozoic Oceans means. But today and right now, we are talking about paleontology with the museum's paleontologist, Dr. Adiel Klompmaker. Hello, Dr. Klompmaker. How are you?
Hi, everyone. I'm fine.
Great. So we are going to ask him some questions about paleontology and paleontologists and learn a little bit more about that. And then we'll have the rest of the day planned for more fossil fun. And if you stick around the rest of the day, you're probably going to see Dr. Klompmaker again. Isn't that right?
4 p.m. for sure.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's jump on in. Can you help me with the question? I know it seems really basic, but sometimes it's nice to just go back to the basics. What is paleontology?
It's very good to go back to the basics, and welcome everybody to this live broadcast from wherever you are. So paleontology is essentially the study of ancient life, and this spans from all the way to the early plant fossils about 3.5 billion years ago to pretty much the present day. So we got 3.5 billion years of history of the Earth to work with to study how life evolved, what diversity looked like over time, what animals we had back in the days, plants, invertebrates or vertebrate fossils too. So it's extremely broad study of life.
I like that you mentioned that, it's not, I think when we think of paleontology, a lot of times we think of bones and that kind of stuff. So it's nice to think of paleontology or to know paleontology as a much broader definition. It's not just the bones and not just the big animals like you can see on my necklace. I know we're not talking dinos today, but I couldn't resist.
There you go, T-Rex.
So exactly. So not just the bones and the big animals, but paleontology has a wide breadth of things that it covers, right, within that content area. So we get this question a lot, but are paleontology and archaeology the same things? Because we use those words a lot. Can we use them interchangeably?
No, we cannot. No, they are different areas of study, really. Paleontology deals with all of history of life, except for human evolution and culture. So paleontology is spanning all the way from 3.5 billion years ago to pretty much the present day, whereas archaeology really focused on humans, and humans really came to the scene about 2 million years ago for our own genus called Homo, and for our own species, Homo sapiens, which has been around for the last 200,000 years or so. So There's an overlap for the last 2 million years or so, but for the vast majority of Earth's history, there's no overlap whatsoever. So, but there's some gray zones as well. For example, think about humans hunting mammoths. You could argue that the humans would be part of archaeological studies, right? Whereas the mammoths are actually an animal, and they would most likely belong to paleontology. So there's a gray zone there. So and that's why during the time period when humans were around, both archaeologists and paleontologists oftentimes work together.
I was just about to ask if that ever happened. And I think if people are interested a little bit more in this topic, we did a mini series on it at our Museums from Our Home series that we did this summer. We did that with an archaeologist, Lindsay Gordon, who works at the Moundville Native American or Moundville Archaeological Park. Sorry, they just got done with the Native American Festival, so my brain's still in festival mode. But and so if you're interested in paleontology and archaeology, there's this great series where you can learn about the differences between the two and the little bit of overlap that are there. Okay, so what is somebody who studies paleontologist called? What do they do? What are they called, and then what do they do?
Yeah, well, someone who is studying paleontology is called a paleontologist, and they do a variety of things. And this is going to be a pretty extended answer, so bear with me, please. So there's paleontologists who study, for example, a particular group of animals. You've got people studying invertebrates, including microfossils, so animals without a backbone. They're called invertebrate paleontologists. Then we have vertebrate paleontologists. So these are people studying animals with a backbone. You've got paleobotanists, which are people studying fossil plants. And then we have people studying tracks or traces left by animals, typically. Sometimes they are referred to as ichnologists, actually. So you can divide it up in type of animal or type of life form people study. Really. One other way to look at this is by taking a look at the topic a paleontologist covers in his or her study. So some people focus on naming species and trying to identify relationships between those species. Are they relative to one another, or are they not related to another? Some people study how animals or plants interacted with one another and with the environment. These people study the paleoecology of ancient ecosystems. There's people using fossils to study how temperature and rainfall patterns change through time. So they study paleoclimate. There's people looking at the ages of rock using fossils as indicators of a particular age of a rock. There's people who are very interested in where animals lived at a certain point in time and how these hotspots of diversity may have changed over time. So they are looking at oftentimes the regional to a global scale even. And there's people who like to count how many species we have and see what happens with biodiversity patterns through time of one particular group of interest, or of all fossil life on Earth. So that's, you can divide it by the type of animal you study. You can divide it up by what you study specifically. And a paleontologist, in order to answer those questions he or she is interested in, you can go to the field, do field work, collect your fossils, study the fossils subsequently. You can go to museums like the Alabama Museum of Natural History collection. You can simply sit here in your seat and mine a lot of data in the scientific literature and do a variety of analysis. So the way people approach paleontology, what paleontology is really different depending on the paleontologist you're talking about. Some people do primarily research as the main part of their job. Some people teach classes, one or multiple classes per year. Some people are very interested in outreach, like we're doing right now. There are people taking care of the collection, expanding the collection, for example, and putting everything in the right order, so fellow scientists can find the fossils they would like to study in a collection. And So there's people helping with making museum exhibits oftentimes, and every paleontologist employed has a slightly different role to play in paleontology. So it really depends on what you want to do, what your job is, what you're very interested in terms of your studies. It's extremely varied, I have to say.
That is a huge list, which is great because it looks like we have, I wanted to show you this. It looks like we have some paleoecologists in the room.
Yeah.
Yeah, really excited about that. But and some paleochemistry, geochemistry, and everything in there.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing that I didn't mention here, but paleontology is really a crossover between biology, because you're dealing with animals and plants, right?
Mm-hmm.
But also, you need to know about rocks and sediments in which these animals and plants are found. So you also need to know about the geology, the study of rocks, essentially. But then again, you've got people who study biology and geology, but also dabble into chemistry, like the comments just said, or physics or mathematics. So paleontology is extremely interdisciplinary in nature.
So how would someone become a paleontologist? Like, what do you need to do to become a paleontologist?
Well, it depends on how you phrase that question, really, because I consider everybody who's interested in paleontology and has collected fossils a paleontologist.
Oh, good. That means I'm a paleontologist too.
You surely are a paleontologist. Well, there's a difference between paid paleontologists, so professional paleontologists, and people who do it as a hobby or maybe as just a little part of their work, right? So avocational paleontologists, they are oftentimes here in the state of Alabama. They're a member of the Alabama Paleontological Society or the Birmingham Paleontological Society, and they are all paleontologists as well. I call them avocational paleontologists, or some people call them amateur paleontologists. And they go fossil hunting regularly. They come together for a Zoom meeting these days, or later on after this pandemic in person, right? And talk about fossils, what they found, what it looks like. They hear about talks. And then you've got another category, in fact, and those are students. They're perhaps on their way to becoming a professional paleontologist. Well, there are many here at the University of Alabama and nationwide, but also in the world. So how do you become a paleontologist? Well, it depends on the question, really.
Yeah,
on you do it for your hobby, or you want to get paid for it,
right? Now, can you tell us a little bit about your path to becoming a paleontologist? How did you get to where you are?
Yeah, so that's a pretty extended story, actually. So I grew up in the Netherlands, in Western Europe, and very close to where I used to live when I was about 7, 8 years old. They were making a holiday park. And so they were stripping the forest, exposing sediments below the soil. And so I was just going to go out there and take a look what's going on there. So I was making... I was very active in the forest those days, so I was kind of sad about it. But then the rocks and sediments were exposed, and I started finding rocks, and some of the rocks actually contained fossils like clams and fossil sea lilies and plants as well. And wow, this is just fantastic. And when I had to make a choice to which university to go to many years later, I decided to go to the Utrecht University in the Netherlands, where I did my master's on earth sciences. And then I went for a PhD program to Kent State University in Ohio, where I got my PhD. Subsequently, I got 2 temporary research positions, first at the University of Florida, the Florida Museum of Natural History. After 3 years, I moved to University of California, Berkeley, at the University of California Museum of Paleontology to study paleontology there for, I think it was 4 years in total. And right now, since of December last year, I'm the curator of paleontology at the University of Alabama Museums, which is a permanent position. So that's, in a nutshell, my path to becoming a professional paleontologist in my case.
I think a lot of times when you ask that question to paleontologists or scientists really in general too, but there's always some great, or oftentimes there's some great story about discovery as a kid. You know, you found something that was really interesting as a kid and it just stuck with you and stayed with you forever. You turned that passion and that intrigue into, a path, like a career path, which I think is kind of cool. Okay, so, and we're really glad you're here, by the way. It's very exciting. So can you tell us a little bit about what your specialty is?
For my specialty, research-wise, I study the fossil record of crustaceans, particularly crustaceans like crabs, lobsters, and shrimps. And I'm very interested in their diversity through time. What are the chances they get preserved in a fossil record in the first place? Because not every animal does preserve in a fossil record. I'm very interested in their body size. Did it become bigger through time or smaller? I'm interested in the shape they had through time. Does it change through time? And I'm also very interested in the general paleoecology. So how did they interact with other animals, like the prey items like clams and snails? Did they interact with parasites, for example? The answer is yes, actually.
Oh.
So that's one of my specialties. And here in Alabama, there's many more decapod crustaceans like crabs to be discovered still, so I'm in a good place here. The other avenue of research that I've been working on in the last 10 plus years already is how animals interacted with one another. So I'm looking at traces of predators that can be found on their prey items. I look at evidence of parasites that can be found on their hosts in very deep time. And I'm also trying to figure out if there was any competition between different animals through time and how strong that competition actually was. So it requires a variety of different methods, from collecting specimens in the field to delving for months into the scientific literature to collect data set you want to take a look at. It requires also preparing specimens, so you expose whatever specimen you're interested in order to identify the specimens to the species level if you can. Sometimes chemical analysis are important. Sometimes you do experiments in a lab with a tank of water. So it's very interdisciplinary, really, and it's really fun to work with so many people across the world on these research topics.
So when you find predation, or when you find predator, do you find like teeth marks or scrapes, or what kind of things are you finding?
Yeah. So what I'm looking for specifically for my subset of research into predation, so predator-prey interactions to be more precise, is drill holes made by either predatory gastropods that essentially drill a hole into a clam or into a snail. But not only gastropods, sometimes you find evidence of octopuses drilling holes into clams and crustaceans as well. And while the predator itself may be gone, they leave their trace, their hole behind on the prey item. So you know this particular prey item was preyed upon by that particular predator.
That's so neat. I never knew octopuses could do that.
They can. They're extremely smart animals. Use a variety of different predatory techniques in order to defeat their prey item.
So, okay, so do you have like a favorite time period in geologic history that you like to study or are just interested in yourself?
I think I would say the Mesozoic era is my favorite era to study, which is a period ranging from 252 million years ago to about 66 million years ago. It's bounded by two main mass extinctions, the Permian-Triassic mass extinction, which wiped out 95% of all life. And on the other side, 66 million years ago, is also a major mass extinction during which about 75% of all life on Earth vanished. So in between those two main mass extinction periods, you've got the Mesozoic, right? So diversity was really low in the early part of the Mesozoic and then started to rebuild again. So you got many different groups appearing many different vertebrate groups, many different invertebrate groups. Decapod crustaceans became extremely abundant and diverse for the very first time. For example, during the Jurassic and also in the later part of the Mesozoic called the Cretaceous period. During the Mesozoic, you also have many predatory animals evolving or becoming very diverse. Think of, for example, predatory fish like teleost fish. Think of mosasaurs. Think of also crabs that can be very predatory in nature, like lobsters can be. So what we also see is that the intensity of predation increased during this time period of increased abundance of predators. So it's an extremely exciting time period in Earth's history, and I think I spent most of the studies I've done so far in the Jurassic or mostly in the Cretaceous periods. And in Alabama, we've got a lot of Cretaceous, late Cretaceous sediments exposed all the way from about 100 million years ago to 66. So Alabama's a great place to be to study the very late part of the Mesozoic.
Can you help me understand a term you just said? You said the word decapod. Can you help me understand that one real quick?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, decapod is a group of crustaceans, and they include the crabs, the lobsters, and the shrimps. Yeah.
I can't hear decapod without thinking of Moana now. Have you seen Moana? Did you see the song that the crab sang in Moana? Because he says he's a decapod, and I cannot think of that word without thinking of Moana now. And I'm okay with it.
More scientific definition of it.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. Right now, all I think of is a shiny, giant crab monster, but now I know what that means. So that's good. Thank you. If anyone else out there knows what I'm talking about for Moana, put it in the comments. Let me know. All right. So do you have any, well, you kind of touched on this already, but are you, those research topics that you talk about, are those your current research that you're working on now, or are there other research projects that you're working on?
I'm still working on predator-prey interactions. I'm still working on decapod crustaceans. So there's, well, the thing with research is when you start studying, you discover more and more research questions. You study more and more museum collections that have not been studied in great detail for decapod crustaceans, for example. So there's always many more research topics that can be finished. Typically, a researcher throughout his career accumulates much more data than he or she can analyze, or accumulates much more specimens than he or she can work on. So after paleontologists retire, they have the habit of continuing their research past their retirement because they have so many projects to finish up.
Never truly retired, right?
Never truly retire. When people retire, they may not have as much teaching to do anymore. They may not be involved in so many committees anymore. So they actually get a lot of time available to finish all the research projects they may have started already, or they still want to do before things go downhill, so to say. But for my current research, I'm still working on decapod crustaceans. I'm still studying the taxonomy of decapod crustaceans, their diversity through time, what it means, and why were animals so diverse in the first place during some periods, why were they not very diverse in other periods. I'm actively now working on predatory drill holes made by octopuses in deep time. It's not very well studied, and I'll talk more about it to scientific conferences later in the year. So there's many ongoing projects.
So that's part of I'm assuming that's part of a paleontologist's life, is the conference circuit too, and getting to learn from others and professional development and sharing ideas, right? And contributing to the knowledge.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean,
general knowledge.
Yeah, you work together with many colleagues. You want to talk to other colleagues about what you found and how they may perceive what you found. And you learn about what other paleontologists do at a variety of conferences. What's the hot topic coming up in,
Right.
for example. So you may talk to people and have an idea about their research, and you may develop joint projects that you're going to do in the future. So networking during conferences is absolutely vital.
So, okay. you sort of mentioned it a little bit, but I want to ask, are there any questions out there that you want to answer or any mysteries that you want to try to solve that you'll never be truly retired either? I'm assuming you probably have lots of questions like you mentioned, but is there anything that's pressing that you really wish that you had some answers to or would like to study to find the answers to them?
Yeah, now I'm here in Alabama. I've got many things I'd like to do in Alabama here. For example, like I mentioned, I'm very interested in crabs, lobsters, and shrimp. And recently, I did take a look at how many fossil species of decapod crustaceans we have in the state of Alabama, and there are less than 50.
Oh,
The entire fossil record.
that can't be right.
There's much more to discover. For example, there are more than 80 modern crayfish already. And there are
Wow.
many more crabs, lobsters, and shrimp to be found in the Mobile area and in the Gulf of Mexico. So there's so much more to discover, and I'm already seeing more species that can be described. Some educational paleontologists have approached me saying, "Hey, I've got a crab as well. Can you take a look at what it is?" And that way, we've already discovered a few more taxa that were unknown from Alabama so far. So I'm very interested in taking a look at what do we have actually in the state.
Yeah.
So less than 50. There's much more to discover.
There has to be. Yeah, absolutely. There has to be.
One thing I'm very interested in uncovering here in the state of Alabama. I'm also very interested in continuing my research on parasites. Parasites are very enigmatic in a fossil record simply because they're very small. It's difficult to see. They have a very soft body, which means that they decay really fast, and so they won't fossilize very easily. However, sometimes they leave traces behind, like swellings or holes on their host, and that evidence you can find back in the fossil record. So I'm very interested in taking a look at what happened with parasites through time. Did it become more common? When did it start? Which animals were infected? So that's a really a field of research that's really exploding over the last 5 years or so, and later this year or early next year, 2 books will be coming out with the latest on parasites through time.
That's neat. So everyone keep an eye out for those later on, because that sounds like a really interesting topic, I think. And I bet you can make some connections to modern day examples of predator-prey relationships also.
Absolutely. The present is the key to the past is a phrase we use often in paleontology, right? So we learn, we see in the modern, and then it can apply to the fossil record. For example, for decapod crustaceans, there's a group called isopods that infest crabs, for example, and they make a huge swelling in the gill chambers of these crabs. Now, while the parasite doesn't survive the fossilization process because it's soft-bodied, it decays really fast, they leave swelling behind in the gill chamber of crabs, for example. And that's what we know from the modern. And we found these swellings too all the way back to 150 million years ago. So we really use the modern in order to see what happened in the past.
I can only imagine the first time that was found being probably whoever found the first one was probably really confused by what they were seeing. And, what is this swelling on this fossil? But maybe, or this bump, I'm guessing, on this fossil. And then they could hopefully find, like you said, examples of it in modern day and help explain what they were seeing in the past.
Yeah, that's why we work together with biologists, for example, who have been studying that phenomenon for much longer than paleontologists have.
Right. That's neat. I like that a lot. So we actually have a couple of questions. Can I pop them up to show you?
Sure.
So first off, I thought you might like this. Killer invertebrates. They don't get as much love as the vertebrates, but they're just as cool.
Oh, yes. I mean, they're very much more diverse, too. And they're much more abundant as well. I mean, as an ecological law, you've got many more species of invertebrates relative to vertebrates. So there's much more to discover in invertebrate paleontology in terms of diversity and abundance. But I understand that the bigger animals get a lot of attention too.
A lot of attention, yeah. Okay, so here's our first question. comes from Bill. Is a paleoanthropologist someone who studies ancient hominids more like a paleontologist or an archaeologist? I know, what do you think? Do you have any opinions on that?
Yeah, that's a great question, Bill. When I mentioned difference between archaeology and paleontology, paleoanthropologist was a term that was in my head as well, actually. Yeah, the paleoanthropologists really studied ancient hominids too. That's, I would say, it. They're a subset of archaeology. I'm not hopefully insulting some paleoanthropologists here, but it's really how you define those terms, really. But it's paleoanthropologist is a really common term in the sciences to use for people studying fossil hominids. Perhaps you could argue that paleoanthropologists study the ancient part of hominids rather than the last few thousands or hundreds of years. But please correct me on this.
We'll see if anyone comes in. I have no opinions to offer. I'm sorry. I'm not quite sure. But so let me see. I think there's another question that came in. Oh, good. Someone knew what I was talking about for Moana. That's a line from that song I was telling you about. I'm going to send you that song, Adiel, so you can see it. I don't know if you've seen it already. All right. This is a great question that came from Logan. Are any students in undergrad or high school being included in research programs throughout the museum at the moment?
No. At the moment, right, the answer is no, because we're living in a pandemic, of course, so as there's limited opportunities to include students in the research. In the past, I know students were involved in research with my predecessor, and I'm definitely hoping to work with students on a number of research projects in the past, and when this pandemic is over. There's so much to do in a collection in the first place. Curation-wise, there's a lot of very interesting studies that I'd like to get students involved in as well.
Someone asked if you could explain DNA analysis related to molecular paleontology. Are you familiar with that?
I don't study it myself, but I've heard some talks about it. So the problem with DNA is that it doesn't survive for very long. I think the oldest evidence of some strands of DNA are about 1 million years old, and that's about it, right? So those people studying ancient DNA really have to focus on the last million years. So they're studying Ice Age animals, for example. So that's a possibility. But even in 1 million years, a lot of things have happened on Earth, right? Think about the many different glacial and interglacial periods or ice ages and warmer periods in between that have happened over the last 1 million years or so.
I think some people might say that 2020 has felt like 1 million years, but maybe not. All right. Have you ever found a Megalodon fossil?
Yes, in collections.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I've never found a Megalodon fossil myself, simply because I haven't been looking in the right periods of time to find a Megalodon. That's the main reason. In the Elimination Museum collection, we do have at least 10 relatively big teeth of a Megalodon, not found in Alabama, but found in the Carolinas, that we often show people when we do tours on occasion.
So they are found, can they be found here in Alabama? Have you seen any examples found here?
I haven't seen them in the museum collection of the Alabama Museum.
Okay, yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if there's opportunities to find them in the southern part of Alabama on occasion. I think it's pretty rare to find them in Alabama, if at all. Hey,
more mysteries and more questions to solve for later, for other research projects, right?
That's right.
Okay, so before I go into my last question for you, I really want to have an opportunity to ask you this last question in the Alabama Museum of Natural History gallery space. So as I'm asking you this question, I'm gonna travel upstairs so we can get to see how beautiful the gallery space is. I was gonna stream from there, but there was a class coming and it was just kind of echoey, so it didn't work out. So while I'm asking you this, I'm gonna put my mask on so I can be safe when I go outside. Can you still hear me okay?
Yes, it's perfect.
Great. So we are gonna travel together, everyone. We're gonna go see the museum. And while I am traveling, I wanted to ask you, so for National Fossil Day, we are doing, live streams, and we're asking questions for paleontologists, but we're doing something kind of special this year, and that is we are have created the opportunity for people to schedule time to have a conversation with paleontologists, with you, and with another paleontologist named Dr. Takahito Ikejiri, Dr. Ike. Is that something that you're excited about?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to talk to people at Paleontology, either kids or adults, and they can sign up, I believe, for time slots tomorrow. I think I'm on at 10 and I'm on at 11 for another time slot, and Dr. Ike is available at 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock. So you go online and you can sign up if you're interested in talking to one of us. I'm an invertebrate paleontologist mostly, whereas Dr. Ike is focusing mostly on vertebrates. So depending on your specialty and your interest, sign up if you want to. Are you back, Ellie?
All right, can you see the museum?
Looks nice.
So if you haven't been here before, this is the Alabama Museum of Natural History. It's a beautiful building. We have our state fossil hanging from the ceiling, the Basilosaurus, which is not a dinosaur, is it, Dr. Klompmaker?
No, it's an ancient whale living in the Eocene epoch about 50 million years ago or so.
That's really neat. So I just wanted to ask that last question. If you have questions about paleontology, make sure to visit the website. It just popped up. I'll do it again. And you can schedule a time to talk with either Dr. Klompmaker or Dr. Ike about paleontology. And like he said, you can talk about invertebrates, things without a backbone, or vertebrates, things with a backbone, or anything really, if you're curious about it. And we are taking the schedule is being created today. So if you're interested, visit the website and it shows you how to sign up for a conversation. And we'll be in kind of like small group Zoom rooms to have conversations. So it'll be via Zoom and you'll get the link sent to you by me. But I wanted to show off the museum. It's great and it's National Fossil Day and we've got to see fossils on National Fossil Day. So that's our museum. All right. We also are encouraging you to share your fossils with us. So please, 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 if you have any fossil collections that you would like to share, we would love for you to post them with the hashtag National Fossil Day or hashtag my collection. Make sure to tag us at UAMNH on Instagram or Twitter so we can see your own collections. And do that throughout the day to help celebrate National Fossil Day. There it is. All right. So this has been a really interesting talk. Thank you so much for being here and helping us understand paleontology a little bit better. People are interested in National Fossil Day and want to see the rest of our schedule. Don't forget that our schedule, we have 4 events happening today. The next one's happening at noon. It's an interview with Dr. Doug Phillips about discovering Alabama and the history of the show and some of the shows that are coming up, which is kind of interesting, and then, or kind of really interesting. And then at 2 o'clock, we're talking with Dr. Alberto Perez Huerta about Paleozoic oceans. And then at 4 is a very special thing for us. It's the first time we are presenting the Alabama Avocational Paleontologist Award. Is that right? And that's where you'll see Dr.
That's
Klompmaker again.
excited about
Very
it.
exciting day. So make sure to check all of those out. We have a couple more comments real quick. Make sure that there aren't any other questions for you. Someone asked me to show the T-Rex. I think we might need to ask it. Should we show them the T-Rex?
Yeah, you're only 100 yards away.
I hope I'm not making everyone too dizzy. I'm sorry. T-Rex is coming. So even though we're not talking about dinosaurs really today, because they're not Paleozoic ocean animals, there's nothing wrong with seeing a good old T-Rex every once in a while. Plus, it matches my necklace, so. All right. I think that might be it for now. It looks like, if you have any other questions, please make sure to log into the other events today. You can ask some questions there. Or if you have any other questions, make sure to contact the museum at our website. And I'll pop it up one more time. Make sure to contact us with any questions that you have. And I want to say thank you to Dr. Klompmaker. Happy National Fossil Day to you.
Happy National Fossil Day, everybody. And thanks for listening.
All right, so we will see all of you at noon today. If you're not able to join us while these live streams are happening, all of these videos are being archived on whatever platform you're watching on right now. So if you're watching on Facebook or on YouTube, they all the videos are being archived there, so you can go back and watch them later and share them with your friends. And you know what? While you're there, like and subscribe to the page or the channel that you're watching on. Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Klompmaker. We will see you at 4 o'clock, and we will see all of you watching at noon. Have a great day.
Bye, everyone.